The distress signal pierced through Arya Ven's helmet come like a knife through silence. She had been conducting routine geological surveys on Theta 7, a planet whose crystalline formations generated electromagnetic fields so intense that most species' nervous systems would fry within minutes of exposure. But stubborn, adaptable humans had found a way to endure what others could not. Arya paused her scanner and traced the signal's origin. 2 kilometers northeast, near the rift zone, her heart sank. The rift zone was a massive energy chasm where reality itself seemed to fracture, where gravitational anomalies danced with temporal distortions. Nothing that entered ever came back out intact. She shouldn't investigate. Protocol demanded she report it and wait for a full team. But something in the signal's desperation made her move forward without hesitation. 20 minutes later, Arya crested a ridge of violet crystal and froze in her tracks. 2 creatures stood at the chasm's edge, massive beings that resembled a fusion of bear and reptile, each easily 3 meters tall. Their scales shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with obvious distress, and their 6 eyes tracked her approach with startling intelligence. These were Korvathi apex predators whose species had evolved on this very world, creatures so territorial that they were known to attack survey teams on site. Yet these 2 weren't attacking. They were trembling, their powerful bodies shaking with fear. The larger one, Korvac, Arya would later learn his name, took a step toward her and did something that defied every xenobiological report she'd ever read. He lowered his massive head and made a sound that could only be described as a whimper. His companion, smaller but equally imposing, gestured frantically toward the chasm with her clawed appendage. Arya activated her translator, though she doubted it would help with a species that had never demonstrated language capacity. To her shock, broken words emerged from the device. Small 1 ... fallen ... energy ... Her eyes widened behind her helmet visor. The Korvathi had learned basic at least enough to communicate their desperate need. How long had they been trying to signal for help? She approached the chasm's edge cautiously, her suit's alarms immediately screaming warnings. The energy readings were off the charts, far beyond safety thresholds. But there, clinging to a crystal outcropping 30 meters down, was a juvenile Korvathi no larger than a human child. Its scales flickered weakly, and even from this distance, Arya could see the electrical discharge dancing across its small body. "How long has it been down there?" she asked. Korvac held up his claws. 5 digits, 5 hours. The cub had maybe minutes left before the energy field would cook it from the inside out. Every logical part of Arya's brain screamed at her to refuse. The energy field would disrupt her equipment. One wrong move and she'd be lost in the chasm forever, her body scattered across multiple timelines. The Korvathi themselves couldn't descend. Their biology made them fatally susceptible to the electromagnetic chaos below. But humans were different. Humans were insane enough to try the impossible. "I'll need to anchor myself," she said, unsure if they understood. She uncoiled her repelling cable and looked at Korvac. "Can you hold this?" The massive creature grasped the cable's end in his powerful jaws, bracing his bulk against a crystal formation. His companion did the same, creating a living anchor point with their combined strength. Trust these territorial killing machines were trusting her with their child's life. Arya secured the cable to her harness and backed toward the edge. "If I die doing this, I'm going to be very annoyed," she muttered, then dropped into the chasm. The descent was immediate chaos. Energy tendrils lashed at her suit like living things, and her heads-up display flickered wildly. Gravity seemed to forget which direction it preferred, pulling her sideways, then up, then down again with nauseating randomness. Her earpiece filled with static and the howling of electromagnetic waves, but she descended, meter by meter. At 20 meters, her suit's shielding began to fail. Pain shot through her nervous system, the edges of what her human physiology could withstand. She gritted her teeth and kept going. At 25 meters, she saw the cub's eyes, terrified, fading, but still alive and watching her approach. At 30 meters, her gloved hand closed around the juvenile's small body. It was lighter than she expected, its scales hot to the touch from the energy assault. She pulled it close to her chest, using her own body as a shield. "Pull?" she screamed into the cum, hoping the Corvathi would understand. They did. The ascent was worse than the descent. Arya's muscles screamed as the cable jerked upward. The cub whimpered against her, and she held tighter, even as energy bursts scorched her suit's exterior. Her oxygen warnings flashed red. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 20 meters, 15:10. Hands no, claws reached down and grasped her harness, hauling her over the edge with desperate strength. Arya collapsed on solid ground, still clutching the cub. Its parents immediately surrounded them, making sounds she'd never heard from Corvathi, soft, urgent, almost musical. She released the juvenile, and it stumbled into its parents' embrace. Korvac turned to Arya, his 6 eyes meeting her too. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered his massive head until his forehead touched her helmet. The gesture was universal: gratitude, respect. His companion gently nudged a claw against Arya's shoulder, then picked up their cub, cradling it with surprising tenderness. As they turned to leave, Korvac paused and looked back. His translator crackled once more. Human ... brave, we ... remember. Arya watched them disappear into the crystal forests, her body shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Her suit was ruined. Her equipment was fried? She'd violated a dozen safety protocols? And she smiled, because that's what humans did. When faced with impossible odds and certain danger, when logic demanded retreat and survival instincts screamed warnings, humans looked at a terrified parent and a dying child and said, "I'll try." The galaxy was full of species stronger, faster, and smarter than humanity. But none were quite so magnificently, recklessly compassionate. None were quite so willing to risk everything for someone else's tomorrow. As Arya began her trek back to base, she knew the story would spread. The Corvathi would remember. And perhaps on this small crystal world, a bridge had been built between species not through diplomacy or trade, but through one human's refusal to abandon hope. That was humanity's true superpower, the stubborn insistence that every life mattered.